My wife and I arrived at my daughter's promotion party. She positioned me behind her back. Hide that limp. You're embarrassing me. I obeyed. Like I've obeyed for 40 years. I'm the invisible man. The crippled father. The guy on disability nobody mentions. But there's one thing they never knew. When the billionaire walked in, he ignored my daughter's bow and outstretched hand. He walked straight to me, grabbed my hand, whispered, "I've been searching for you for 40 years. The entire ballroom froze. My wife's champagne glass shattered on the floor. And the secret I'd buried for 40 years was about to be revealed. Comment your age plus your biggest regret in 3 words. Go. I'll reply to as many as I can. And drop like if you think this billionaire is about to change Logan's life or ruin it." It happened the night my daughter got promoted to vice president. Maeve had rented a ballroom at one of those fancy downtown Chicago hotels for her celebration. I should have been proud. I was proud. But that's not what I remember most about that night. What I remember is Judith grabbing my arm before we walked in. "Don't limp, Logan," she hissed, "and stay in the back. This is Maeve's night, not yours." I nodded. After 40 years of marriage, I'd learned when to keep my mouth shut. The ballroom was packed with executives in expensive suits, all holding champagne and laughing too loud. Maeve stood near the front, in a red dress, surrounded by people congratulating her. She glanced our way when we entered, gave Judith a wave, and ignored me completely. That was normal. "There," Judith pointed to a corner near the bar. "You can stand there, don't wander off." She headed straight for Maeve while I made my way to my assigned spot. The limp was worse in the evenings, and the brace under my shirt dug into my lower back with each step. L3, L4 vertebrae, the doctors called it. I just called it my permanent reminder that some things don't heal. From my corner, I watched the party unfold without me. Presentation screens showed architectural renderings of Maeve's new project, a luxury high-rise going up downtown. I squinted at the address listed at the bottom. Near the Loop, 4th floor mentioned in the plans. Something about that address made my spine tighten. I knew it, didn't I? But trying to remember was like grabbing at smoke. It just made my back hurt worse. Another screen displayed a memorial plaque design. In honor of unknown heroes, 1984. It read with a grainy group photograph below men, in uniforms faces too blurred to identify. Looking at it made my chest feel tight, though I couldn't say why. Maeve's voice carried across the room. Honoring the past while building the future of Chicago. I shifted my weight, trying to ease the ache. 67 years old, and I couldn't stand at my own daughter's party without my spine screaming. Nobody noticed me standing there. I'd gotten good at being invisible. That address wouldn't leave me alone. Downtown Chicago, 4th floor. Why did it feel important? Why did thinking about it make the old injury flare up like someone was pressing on the nerve? The crowd began to quiet as an MC took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please." The conversations died down. "We're honored tonight to have a very special keynote speaker," the MC continued. "A man who's reshaped Chicago's skyline and whose vision has transformed our city." I rubbed my lower back, absently feeling the ridge of scar tissue through my shirt. Something was about to change. I could feel it the way you feel a storm coming before the sky opens up. Please join me in welcoming the CEO of Ashford Development, Mr. Victor Ashford. The ballroom erupted in applause. That address kept nagging at me. Downtown Chicago, 4th floor. It made my back ache worse just thinking about it, but I couldn't remember why. Then the CEO walked in, and everything changed. He walked in like he owned the room. In Chicago real estate, he basically did. Victor Ashford moved through the ballroom doors with the kind of presence that made conversations stop. Silver hair, expensive suit, everything about him said power. But there was something else, the way he held his left arm slightly protective, like it still remembered an old injury. Maeve practically ran to the greeting line. Judith grabbed my elbow. "Come on," she hissed. "We need to be in the greeting line." She positioned me like furniture. Maeve in front, hand ready, Judith beside her, and me behind them. Literally behind them, half hidden by Judith's shoulder. "Stand there," Judith whispered. "Don't say anything." Victor Ashford crossed the floor. People parted automatically. Maeve straightened her dress. Judith touched her hair. Both so focused on impressing him that they didn't notice what I noticed. Victor wasn't looking at them. His eyes were scanning behind us, looking for something. Then his gaze landed on me. I was shifting my weight, easing the ache in my lower back, favoring my right leg, taking pressure off the left. the movement I'd made 10,000 times. Victor Ashford's face went white. He stopped walking, just stopped 3 feet from Maeve's extended hand. His eyes locked on my legs on the way I was standing. "Mr. Ashford," Maeve said brightly, "it's such an honor." He walked right past her, didn't even glance at her hand, just walked past like she wasn't there. Maeve's smile faltered. Judith tried next. "Mr. Ashford, welcome." He walked past her too, past Judith's practiced smile, past her perfectly chosen words, like they were strangers on a street corner. The ballroom went quiet. Hundreds of eyes watching this break in protocol. CEOs didn't ignore their hosts. But Victor Ashford wasn't looking at hosts. He stopped directly in front of me, close enough I could smell his cologne, close enough to see the tension in his jaw. He stared at my legs, at the way I was standing, at the limp I'd been told to hide. "What's going on?" Judith whispered sharply. "Logan, what did you do?" I couldn't answer, because Victor Ashford was staring at me, and something about his face, the emotion barely held in check, made my heart pound. "Mr. Ashford," Maeve tried again, voice strained, "I'm the vice president of—" Victor raised one hand, commanding. Wait, he never took his eyes off me. "That stance," he said quietly, voice rough. "The way you shift your weight, the left leg." My mouth went dry. "How did you—" 40 years, he interrupted. His eyes moved from my legs to my face. Recognition, grief, something I couldn't name. "I've spent 40 years looking for the man who stands exactly like that." The ballroom was dead silent. Victor took one more step closer. His hands were shaking. "That limp," he whispered. But in the silence, everyone heard. I'd know it anywhere. Judith tried to pull me back. "What's going on?" she hissed. "Logan, who is this man?" But Victor Ashford's eyes never left mine. He stepped closer. Close enough that I could see the lines around his eyes, the gray in his hair that matched mine. Close enough to see something in his expression that made my chest feel like it was in a vice. "Oh, L4 vertebrae," he said quietly. His voice was rough, like every word cost him something. "Crushed by a steel beam, 1984. My blood turned to ice. How did he know the doctors had told me L3, L4? The exact vertebrae. The technical medical term I'd heard 1,000 times in hospital rooms and physical therapy sessions. But that was 40 years ago, and I'd never told anyone outside of doctors in downtown Chicago. Victor continued. His hands were trembling now. "4th floor, you came back 3 times. The world tilted. 4th floor, downtown Chicago, came back 3 times. And suddenly I wasn't standing in a ballroom anymore. I was 27 years old, smoke in my lungs, flames licking up the walls, and a young man's voice screaming for help from somewhere above me. "You," I whispered. The word barely made it past my throat. "You were on the 4th floor." Victor's eyes filled with tears. He nodded once sharp and quick, like he was afraid if he moved too much, he'd fall apart completely. "I've been searching for you for 40 years, Captain Warren." Captain Warren? Nobody had called me that in 4 decades. "Dad?" Maeve's voice sounded distant, confused. "What is he talking about?" "You know, Mr. Ashford, this is ridiculous," Judith started. "Logan was never, Victor turned to her. Just a look. That was all it took." She stopped talking. He turned back to me and placed both hands on my shoulders. Not grabbing, not demanding, just holding on, like he needed to know I was real. "Everyone needs to hear this," he said, but he was speaking to me, not to them. "This story, what you did." He raised his voice, then addressing the silent ballroom. "What this man did." 300 people stood frozen watching us, watching me. The security guard from the north side who'd spent 40 years trying to disappear. Victor's grip on my shoulders tightened. "Captain Warren," he said, and his voice cracked on my old title. "Will you tell them what happened? Or should I—" I looked at him, really looked at him, and through the expensive suit and the silver hair and the success written all over him, I saw a 27-year-old kid with architectural plans clutched in his burned hands, coughing smoke, certain he was going to die. 40 years fell away in a heartbeat. "It's been 40 years," I said slowly. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, but I'll tell it. Victor's eyes closed briefly, like I'd given him something he'd been waiting for his whole life. Then he helped me step forward. Actually helped me, one hand on my elbow, guiding me past where Judith and Maeve stood frozen, past them, to the center of the space where everyone could see me, where my limp was visible, where my age showed, where 40 years of being invisible ended. Victor stood beside me, his hand still on my shoulder. "Brothers, That's what we looked like, I realized. Two old men who'd survived something together. Tell them, Victor said quietly, just to me. Tell them about the fire. I took a breath, looked out at the sea of faces, at Maeve's pale, confused expression, at Judith's tight-lipped fury, at 300 strangers who had no idea what they were about to hear, and I closed my eyes. The ballroom disappeared, the expensive suits, the crystal chandeliers, Maeve's hurt face. Judith's anger, all of it faded like smoke. I was 27 again, standing in front of a 6-story building in downtown Chicago that was eating itself alive with fire. And the call had just come in. I closed my eyes in that ballroom, and I was back. 3:47 p.m., June 14th, 1984. Structure fire downtown. Partial collapse, multiple victims trapped. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the radio as Engine 17 screamed toward the loop. I was 27 years old. Captain Logan Warren, Chicago Fire Department. I'd been on the job for 5 years. I thought I'd seen everything. I was wrong. The building was 6 stories. Smoke poured from every window. We arrived at 3:53 p.m. The structure groaned like a dying animal. People screamed from the windows, some waving shirts, some just screaming. My lieutenant, Danny Fisher, grabbed my shoulder. Warren, this thing's coming down. We get 1 shot. Then we make it count. The first rescue took 8 minutes. We found 6 people trapped on the 2nd floor, office workers, huddled behind overturned desks. The smoke was thick black, suffocating. We got them out through the emergency stairwell. 6 souls. Safe. Outside, Danny pulled me back. Warren, the structure's failing. We got who we could... There's more up there. Logan, don't. I went back in. The 3rd floor was hell. The fire had spread horizontally, eating through the east wing. We found 5 more people, 3 secretaries, a custodian, and a young man in a suit clutching a roll of blueprints. He couldn't have been older than me. Burn marks on his left hand, eyes wide with terror. Come on, I grabbed his arm. Leave the damn blueprints. I can't, they're the only copies. I didn't argue. I just pulled. We got all 5 out. The young architect stumbled onto the sidewalk, coughing, still holding those blueprints. He looked at me through the smoke. Thank you, he whispered. I nodded. 11 people saved. My job was done. Then we heard the scream from the 4th floor. Danny grabbed my jacket. Warren, no, that's an order. Then fire me when I get back. The stairs were gone. I had to climb through wreckage, twisted metal, burning wood, collapsing drywall. The heat was unbearable. My mask fogged. The 4th floor hallway was a furnace. And there he was, the young architect, the one I'd just saved. He'd gone back inside. What the hell are you doing? I shouted over the roar of flames. The blueprints, I dropped them. The originals are in my office. Are you insane? They're 3 years of work. I can't. A support beam cracked above us. I didn't think. I just moved. I grabbed him, threw him toward the window. Go! He stumbled. I pushed him through the emergency ladder. He tumbled onto the platform outside just as the ceiling gave way. The steel beam caught me across the back. I heard it before. I felt it. A metallic shriek, then a sound like a gunshot. My spine. The world tilted. I hit the floor face first, and the beam pinned me. I couldn't move my legs. I couldn't feel anything below my waist. The last thing I remembered was smoke, fire, and the young man's face above the wreckage screaming for help. I woke up 3 days later in Northwestern Memorial Hospital. The doctor stood beside my bed chart in hand. Captain Warren, you're very lucky to be alive. My legs... You have a crush injury to your L3, L4 vertebrae. The steel beam compressed your spinal cord. You'll walk again, but... He hesitated. Your firefighting career is over. I stared at the ceiling. 27 years old. My career, my identity, my life gone in one afternoon. 6 weeks later, Mayor Washington himself pinned a medal on my chest. Kids, 16 lives, he said. 16 families who get to go home because of you. The ceremony lasted 20 minutes. They handed me a plaque, shook my hand, took photos. The young architect showed up, Victor Ashford. I learned his name. He had tears in his eyes. I'm so sorry, he whispered. This is my fault. You're alive, I said. That's all that matters. He handed me his business card. When I build my first building, I'm naming it after you. I smiled, but we both knew it was just talk. I never saw him again. Disability checks didn't cover rent. Judith was pregnant. Maeve was born 8 weeks after the collapse. I took a job as a night security guard at a warehouse on the south side. The metal went into a box in the basement. I stopped talking about the fire. Judith didn't want to hear it. Maeve grew up thinking her father was just a guy who limped. 40 years is a long time to be invisible. I worked night security at office buildings across Chicago. Different buildings, same limp. The L3, L4 injury never truly healed. Some days were manageable. Some days I needed the wheelchair. I stopped talking about the fire. Nobody wanted to hear it. Maeve was 5 when she found the metal in the basement. "Daddy, what's this?" I knelt down my back, screaming. "I used to be a firefighter." Judith's voice cut through the moment. "Put that away, Logan. Focus on the future, not the past. We have bills to pay." The metal went back in the box. We never spoke of it again. Maeve grew up hearing one version of the story. Your father had an accident. He gets disability. She never heard your father is a hero. He saved 16 lives. At family gatherings, Judith introduced me the same way. "This is my husband. He's retired." When Maeve was a teenager, her friends asked about my limp. She'd look away, embarrassed. When Maeve became VP of Real Estate Development, I became a footnote. The father who couldn't keep up, the man with the bad back who worked security jobs. I became invisible in my own home. Judith's coldness grew with each passing year. She was ashamed of me, ashamed of the limp, ashamed of the wheelchair on bad days, ashamed that I couldn't provide the life she'd imagined. "You used to be somebody," she'd say during arguments. "Now you're just this." I'd look at the basement door, at the box with the metal inside, at the man I used to be. Captain Logan Warren, Chicago Fire Department. 16 lives saved. But that man was gone, buried under 40 years of silence. 40 years. That's how long I'd been invisible. And then tonight, I was standing in that ballroom in downtown Chicago. I opened my eyes. The flashback ended. I was back at Maeve's promotion party. Victor Ashford's hand was still on my shoulder. His grip was firm, steady. The ballroom was silent. 300 people, executives, developers, Chicago's elite stared at us. They'd heard everything. The fire, the rescues, the steel beam, the 40 years. Some were crying. I looked at Maeve. Her face was pale tears streaming down her cheeks. Her mouth hung open. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. I looked at Judith. She looked like someone had slapped her. Her eyes were wide, her lips pressed into a thin line. No words, just frozen shock. Victor squeezed my shoulder. His voice was thick with emotion. "This man saved my life 40 years ago," he said to the room. "I've been searching for him ever since." The silence deepened. Victor reached into his jacket pocket. "I've carried something with me every single day for 40 years, he said quietly. "Something I wanted to show him if I ever found him again." He pulled out something folded and yellowed. Maeve's hand went to her mouth. Judith took a step back, and Victor Ashford held up the one thing that would change everything. Victor unfolded the yellowed paper slowly, carefully, like it was sacred, because to him it was. He held it up for the entire ballroom to see. It was the front page of the Chicago Tribune, June 15, 1994. The headline read, "Chicago Fire, Captain Injured, Rescuing Final Victim." And there in grainy black and white was a photograph of me, 27 years old. CFD uniform torn and bloodied, being loaded into an ambulance, my face young, determined, in agony. I barely recognized myself. Victor's voice filled the silent ballroom. June 1984. I was 27 years old, a junior architect. I had my whole life planned out. He paused, looking down at the newspaper. I was working on blueprints for a downtown building when the fire broke out. I got out with the first group. But I'd left the blueprints behind. I know it was stupid, but they were 2 years of my work. His voice tightened. I went back for them. The stairwell collapsed behind me. I was trapped on the 4th floor. He looked at me. His eyes glistened. This man, Captain Logan Warren, he went back into that building 3 times that day. The ballroom was frozen. First trip saved 6 people. Second trip saved 5 more, including me the first time. His crew ordered him to pull out. The building was collapsing. He refused. Victor's voice cracked. Third trip he came back for me, because I'd been stupid enough to go back inside. He pointed at me. When that steel beam fell, he pushed me through the gap. It crushed his spine instead of mine. Victor pulled up his shirt. The entire left side of his torso was covered in burn scars, deep twisted discolored skin that stretched from his ribs to his shoulder. His left arm scarred from wrist to bicep. Gaze rippled through the crowd. "These scars are from the fire 40 years ago," Victor said quietly. "They remind me every single day." He pointed at me. "His scars ended his career at 27 so I could have mine." Victor's voice grew stronger. "I built my empire on guilt and gratitude. Every building I design has the most advanced firefighter safety systems in the country. I founded the First Responder Foundation because of Captain Warren. I spent 40 years searching for him. Private detectives, dead ends, false names. He held up the newspaper again. I knew his name, Logan Warren, Chicago Fire Department, but he disappeared. No forwarding address, no social media, nothing. His voice broke. And tonight, at his daughter's party, celebrating a new building in downtown Chicago, I finally found him. He paused, standing in the back of the room, hiding, like he was nobody. Victor turned to face Maeve. "Do you know where you're building, Maeve?" Maeve shook her head slowly. Tears streamed down her face. She couldn't speak. Victor's voice was gentle, but every word cut like a blade. "The exact address where your father's spine was crushed, saving my life." He pointed at the memorial plaque design still displayed on the screen behind us. "That memorial you designed for unknown heroes of 1984? His voice hardened. "Your father is one of them. Captain Logan Warren, Chicago Fire Department." Maeve's hand went to her mouth. A sob escaped. Victor's tone sharpened further. "This man saved 16 lives that day. 16 families got to go home because he ran into a burning building 3 times, when everyone told him it was suicide. He lost his career, his livelihood, his identity. He spent 40 years working night security, living in chronic pain, being invisible in his own home." Victor looked directly at Maeve. His voice was quiet now, but the pain in it was devastating. "You're building on the exact ground where your father became a hero, Maeve. That memorial you designed for unknown heroes? He's one of them." He paused. "And tonight, you made him stand behind you like he was nothing." Maeve's face crumbled. "I didn't know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Dad, I didn't know." Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her hands shook. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't anyone tell me?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her for the first time in years. "You never asked Maeve," I said quietly. She remembered. The years of ignoring me, rolling her eyes at my limp, telling her friends my dad's just on disability. Never asking what happened to you, Dad. Never wanting to know. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. You never wanted to hear about the past," I said. My voice was calm, steady. "You wanted me invisible." Judith tried to speak. "I didn't know it was that serious, Logan. You never—" Victor cut her off. His voice was ice. "He tried to show you. I'm guessing you told him to forget about it and move on." He turned to face Judith fully. "You made him hide tonight, at a party honoring the exact place where he was buried alive, saving other people's lives." Judith's face turned red. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The ballroom was watching, judging. She was exposed, publicly, as the woman who had crushed a hero. Victor raised his hand for attention. "Captain Warren, I didn't just find you tonight." He paused. "When I tracked you down last month, I also found your old crew." The ballroom doors opened. 3 older men walked in wearing suits. Their backs were straight, their eyes sharp. Captain Henry Dalton, 70s, white hair, Logan's former lieutenant. Stanley Fisher, 70s, broad-shouldered, firefighter from 1984. Charles Simmons, 70s, lean gray beard, firefighter from 1984. They walked through the silent crowd toward me. Captain Dalton stopped in front of me. He stood at attention. He saluted. "Captain Warren, the Chicago Fire Department never forgot you, sir." My eyes burned. The first salute I'd received in 40 years. Fisher stepped forward. "We always wondered what happened to you, Cap." Simmons nodded. "You were the best of us. When you left, it wasn't the same." Short embraces. Firefighter brotherhood. 40 years dissolved in seconds. Dalton's voice was thick. "We thought you were dead. Or moved far away. We looked, but—" "I've been here the whole time," I said. "Just invisible." Fisher gripped my shoulder. "Not anymore, Cap. Never again." Someone in the ballroom started clapping. Then another. Then the entire room. A standing ovation. For Logan Warren, the invisible man, the security guard, the guy with the limp, the hero. My old crew stood beside me, 4 firefighters, brothers reunited. Maeve sobbed, trying to move closer, but paralyzed by shame. Judith stood frozen, trapped by her own cruelty. Victor stood with me, protective, proud. The applause continued. 300 people, standing, clapping, some crying. Captain Dalton stood at my right. Fisher at my left. Simmons behind me. A wall of brotherhood. Victor let it go on for 30 seconds. Then he raised his hand. The ballroom quieted. "I have one more thing," Victor said, turning to me. He pulled a business card from his pocket. "Captain Warren, I have an offer for you." Victor pulled out a business card and placed it in my hand. "Director, First Responder Foundation. Below it, salary $200,000 a year." I stared at it. That number was 6 times my security guard wage. The Foundation supports injured first responders, Victor said. We train new firefighters in safety protocols across the country. He paused. I need someone who understands sacrifice, someone who's actually lived with it. You'll work with fire departments nationwide, including Chicago. Captain Dalton stepped forward. CFD wants you back too, Captain Warren, as a senior advisor. You'll train the next generation. Teach them what real courage looks like. Victor handed me an envelope. This is back pay for 40 years, just a starting point. I opened it. A check, a significant amount. Victor continued. And one more thing. The building we're breaking ground on next month, it's being renamed the Warren Memorial Tower. His voice was steady, proud. Your name will be on that building forever, Captain. I looked at the card, the check, processing everything. I looked at Victor. I accept, on one condition. Name it. I do this my way. No more hiding, no more shame, no more being invisible. Victor smiled. Captain Warren, I wouldn't accept it any other way. We shook hands. Firm, equal, brothers. I turned to Judith. I'm moving out, tonight. Her face shock, then anger. You can't just... I cut her off. For the first time in 40 years. I can and I will. You spent 40 years making me ashamed of the best thing I ever did. I'm done with that. I'm done with you. Judith tried to salvage it. Logan, please, we can talk about this. There's nothing left to say. I turned to Maeve. Maeve, if you want to know about me, the real me, you can visit. But I'm done being invisible, even to my own daughter. Maeve nodded through tears. She couldn't speak. I turned toward the ballroom exit. I didn't hide my limp. I let it show completely. Captain Dalton walked beside me, Fisher on my left, Simmons behind me, a protective formation. Victor walked with us. Behind us, Judith called out, Logan, Logan, wait. I didn't turn around. I kept walking. The ballroom doors closed behind us. Outside, the Chicago night air was cold and clean. Captain Dalton put his hand on my shoulder. You good, Cap? I nodded. Yeah. For the first time in 40 years, I'm good. Fisher grinned. Where to now? Victor pulled out his phone. I have a suite reserved at the Four Seasons. Top floor. Captain Warren, it's yours for as long as you need it. I looked at the 4 men around me, my brothers, my crew, my future. Sounds perfect, I said. We walked toward the parking garage. My limp was visible, unmistakable. And for the first time in 40 years, I didn't care. Behind us faintly, I heard Judith's voice calling my name again. I didn't look back. For the first time in 40 years, I didn't need to explain myself to anyone. 6 months later, I stood at that address in downtown Chicago again. Not the broken firefighter buried under rubble, but the man whose name would be carved in bronze at the building's entrance. The November wind cut through the construction site. Cold, sharp, the kind of Chicago cold that makes your bones ache. Mine already did the L3, L4 injury flaring worse in winter. I sat in the wheelchair today. No shame in it anymore. Maeve stood behind me, hands on the chair's handles. Not pushing, just there, present. For the first time in decades, the memorial plaque gleamed under the gray sky. Captain Logan Warren, Chicago Fire Department. Hero. June 14th, 1984. I stared at my own name. 40 years. It took 40 years for the world to say it out loud. Victor's voice broke through my thoughts. This building stands because this man fell. The crowd, reporters, city officials, firefighters in dress blues turned toward me. Captain Dalton stood at attention. Fisher and Simmons flanked him. 3 old men in CFD uniforms back straight despite the years. They saluted. I saluted back. My hand trembled. Not from weakness, from 40 years of waiting for this moment. The mayor handed me a wooden box. The key to the city, Captain Warren. Long overdue. I opened it. A brass key on velvet. It felt heavier than it should have. Say a few words, Victor asked gently. Maeve wheeled me to the microphone. Her hands shook on the handles. I reached back, squeezed her wrist. It's okay. I looked at the crowd. Young firefighters, old ones, people I'd never met who somehow knew my story now. I did my job, I said. My voice cracked. My brothers did theirs. We ran into fire because that's what we do. I paused. The wind picked up. For 40 years I thought that day ended me, broke me, made me nothing. I looked down at my legs, at the wheelchair. Turns out it just changed what chapter I was writing. The firefighters stood straighter. Some of you will get hurt. Some of you already are, and people will forget. They'll stop seeing you. I locked eyes with Captain Dalton. He nodded. Don't let them make you invisible. Your scars aren't shame. They're proof you showed up when it mattered. The applause rolled like thunder, but I didn't hear it. I was watching Maeve wipe her eyes. After she wheeled me away from the crowd. We sat by the construction fence. The skeletal frame of the Warren Memorial Tower rose behind us 20 stories of steel, reaching toward the sky. I quit, Maeve said quietly. What? The real estate firm. I quit last month. I turned to look at her. Her eyes were red but clear. I'm building affordable housing for first responders, firefighters, EMTs, cops. She swallowed hard. People like you, who gave everything and got nothing back. My throat tightened. Maeve, you don't have to. I'm not doing it for you, Dad. Her voice broke. I'm doing it because of you. There's a difference. She knelt beside the wheelchair, took my hand. I spent 35 years not seeing you. I won't waste another day. I pulled her close. She cried into my shoulder. Real tears. Not the performance tears from the ballroom 6 months ago. These were grief and relief and love all at once. I'm proud of you, I whispered. I'm sorry it took me so long to make you proud. You're here now. That's what matters. Victor appeared beside us. The first floor is going to be a training center, he said, for firefighters nationwide. Captain Dalton's already signed on to teach. I looked up at the tower. My name, my legacy, built on the exact ground where I'd fallen. At 67, I said I thought I was done. Victor smiled. Turns out, Captain, you were just getting started. I looked at the plaque again. Bronze. Permanent. My face at 27 stared back, young, fearless, whole. But I wasn't that man anymore, and that was okay. Because the man I'd become scarred, limping 67 years old, had something that 27-year-old didn't. He'd survived long enough to see his story end right. Looking back, I spent 40 years letting other people decide my worth. I let Judith's shame become my silence. I let Maeve's embarrassment become my invisibility. I made myself small so they could feel big. Don't do what I did. Don't hide your scars. Don't bury your medals in the basement. Don't let the people who should love you make you feel like you're not enough. God gave me a second chance at 67. Most people don't get that. Most people die invisible, their stories untold, their sacrifices forgotten. Here's what I learned. Your value isn't determined by who recognizes it. I saved 16 lives. That mattered, whether anyone remembered or not. Your scars tell the truth when people won't. The limp, the wheelchair, the pain, they testified to my sacrifice when my own family refused to. God doesn't waste your suffering. He used 40 years of invisibility to prepare me for this training. Firefighters building the foundation, finally being the father Maeve needed. It's never too late. At 67 in a wheelchair with a broken back, I still got my happy ending. So here's my advice from this old firefighter. Stop waiting for permission to matter. Stop hiding who you are. Stop letting people make you invisible. You showed up. You sacrificed. That's enough. God sees it even when they don't. These grandpa stories aren't just entertainment. They're lessons. If this story touched you, drop a comment below about a time you felt invisible. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Grandpa Stories for more true tales of courage, redemption, and second chances. Because every scar has a story, and every story deserves to be told. Hit that subscribe button. These Grandpa Stories might just change your life,